This video I wanted to touch on the topic of solo traveling, some of my best tips, advice, all of the things. I have gotten a few questions over the past months while traveling abroad alone, and I thought I would compile, some of those key elements into one video. So I will leave timestamps if there's a specific question you want to check out below. Otherwise, let's get into it. So I think the most common question and the thing that can be quite intimidating is planning an itinerary from scratch. So including all of the things that you want to do, how to get from A to B. There's a lot of coordinating, a lot of planning, especially if it is just you doing it solo. It can be quite intimidating. So I will say, I'll start off just by how I do things. I feel like I'm quite an organized person. Like I'm a Virgo rising, so I just like to have things in order. I would say the first thing that I do before traveling to any destination is figure out the area that I want to stay in, because this is going to be your home base for wherever you're visiting. And for me, I like to be sure that it's kind of in the middle of the action. I don't want to be staying somewhere that's outside of where everything's going on, and it's gonna take me extra coordinating to have to either take a taxi into a city, figure out transit, all of the things. So if I can be in a location where I can walk to the majority of things that I want to see and do, that is the best case scenario. And doing this, how are you gonna know where to stay in a country or a city that you've never been to? So I use my bestie Reddit, and I always type into Google, like best areas to stay as a tourist in X city. Some cities are a lot larger, some are a lot smaller, so there could be, more areas to choose from. For example, I spent a month in Japan, 2 weeks in Tokyo, and Tokyo is a massive city. So I really did a lot of research on, which areas to stay, and I actually found my recommendations through Reddit, through where people were saying is the best area to stay in the city for your first time as a tourist. And I took that advice. So read through all these different forums, go through different Google search results, and then decide for yourself on where you think would be the best fit for you. That will lead me sort of into my next point. Google Maps is also my bestie when traveling. I spend way too much time on Google Maps, but I just love searching around and exploring different cities through there and finding the things that I want to do. There's actually a feature on Google Maps where you can save locations or things that are on your radar. So I'll go through and start pinning on Google Maps all of the main sites that I want to see, and then that's going to start helping you plan out your days as well. So once you kind of zoom out of that a little bit and you can see where all of your pins are of your saved places, saved sites, restaurants, activities, hikes, etc., what you want to do, then you're going to start planning out your days. Now, obviously, if you want to be the most efficient, you're going to want to do a whole bunch of things that are in one area within one day. This is what I did big time during, I was in London also for a month. That was really handy because there's so many funky little neighborhoods in London. So I'm not gonna bring myself all the way to one neighborhood just to see one thing and then go all the way back to where I'm staying and then go all the way back to that neighborhood again. I want to try to bang out as much as I can in one session, especially if you're working remotely. Your time might be a little bit more limited for the exploring, so we gotta be efficient. So once I was zoomed out and saw all my pins, I would use Google Calendar and I would start mapping out my days. So for however long, if you're somewhere for a week, then you can, put on your Google Calendar an event for one day. You're saying, I'm gonna explore, I'll just give the example of London again. I'm gonna be in the Soho neighborhood. I'm gonna do this. Put that in your Google Calendar, you know exactly what you're going to be doing that day. And then when you're in the area, okay, I'm going to hit up that, I'm going to hit up this, I'm going to hit up that, and you can kind of allot your time as you go. I don't like to be so rigid where I'm like, I need to be here at 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. I still like to give myself time to wander and explore, and maybe I'm enjoying one thing more than I'm enjoying another, so I'll allot more time for this and that. So you want to still give yourself a little bit of flexibility, but yeah, I found just plotting out my days, saying I'm doing these 5 things today, and then that's what I'm doing for the day. And then you kind of get the feel of, what you have the capacity for as well, because some things might take up a lot more time, or if you're doing a big hike, maybe that's the one thing that you do that day instead of visiting, a coffee shop and going to visit a few cute shops or boutiques, you know, that's not going to take as long as maybe your, you know, 3-hour hike type of thing. Another question I was getting was around budgeting, like where to save, where to splurge. Now, obviously this is something that is going to be very subjective. That's completely up to you and what you feel is worth spending more and saving more on your travels. So I'm gonna go from my own experiences and the things that I think were more worth it versus not, based on what I enjoy doing. And that's the thing with solo traveling. You're really doing these things for your own fulfillment. Like, you're not there to put on a show or be like, look at me, I did this, I did that. Like, you really learn to do things solely for your own fulfillment. And that's what I was doing, and I really enjoyed that. Like, spending my time doing the things I actually wanted to do and not having to, you know, run that past someone else, or, you know, have someone tag along and feel like, are they enjoying this too? Yeah, just embracing it all and taking your time doing the things that you love. I mean, your biggest expenses are going to be your flights and your accommodation. That's always going to be, you know, the big chunk items. So are you the kind of person who, you know, you're not willing to compromise on where you're staying? You need your own space, you need, you know, a beautiful hotel in the middle of the city center? Or are you the kind of person where you don't really care about that kind of stuff and you're happy just staying in a hostel or, you know, renting a room in someone's house? That's completely up to you. I mean, I've sort of done it all. There are cities and places I've been where I have just rented a room in someone's house. When I was in London, that's what I was doing. Whatever floats your boat and whatever you're going to be the most comfortable with. For me, somewhere that I do like to cut the costs and save a little bit is on food. Like, I would much rather go out and have a lot of fun vintage shopping and really, you know, finding cute little gems that I'm able to bring home with me than spending an exorbitant amount of money on food every single day. I did a lot of cooking myself, grocery shopping and bringing food back to wherever I was staying. I found that as long as I had a mini fridge and a kettle in where I was staying, I was able to manage. I would buy oatmeal for breakfast, and that's what I'd have every single day, just a big bag of oatmeal with some fresh fruit or something like that. Very easy to find in any country that you're visiting. And eggs. I mean, I would boil eggs in a kettle. I would do things like that and try to keep my daily food budget to $10 per day, or in more expensive countries, you know, under $20 at least. For example, when I was in Europe or doing London and Paris, I wasn't eating every single meal out. I would, you know, choose maybe 3 to 5 restaurants that I wanted to visit within my extended stay, and that's where I would go out and spend some money on food, but otherwise I was cooking back at my accommodation. For countries where food is a lot more budget friendly, then I could go out and have a nice meal for $10, and that was kind of my budgeted, allotted daily food money. So yeah, that's somewhere where I chose to save, and I would choose to splurge a little more on vintage shopping, visiting galleries, museums, sites that I really wanted to see. So that's completely, you know, up to you where you want to budget, but knowing that your biggest costs are going to be your accommodation and your flights. So if you can be a little bit more flexible in your bookings, and if you don't have, you know, specific days or times, and you can kind of keep your eyes on those costs too and book when you do find the best deals, that's, you know, obviously the best way to go about it. So managing currency in different countries. Honestly, I used my credit card pretty well everywhere. And that was just great. There were a few times I had to go to ATMs, and there are countries that I knew, like when I visited Vietnam and Bali in Indonesia, I knew that, you know, a lot of maybe restaurants or boutiques or little shops aren't going to necessarily take credit cards. So that was something I researched and knew beforehand and took out some currency before even traveling over. So I went to a local currency shop near where I live and exchanged X amount of dollars in their currencies to bring along with me. And then that way I had something, even just getting from airport to your first accommodation. If you're taking like a taxi from the airport and they're not gonna take credit card in the taxi, that's something to be aware of. So making sure you maybe have enough money just to get you from point A to point B when you first get there before you can get yourself accustomed. But I mean, every country has ATMs where you can use your credit card to pull out money. And some places I visited, I didn't even need to take out money because I could just use my credit card everywhere that I went. So that's something you're gonna have to research beforehand, whether your cards are accepted or what kind of cash you're gonna have to bring along with you. But it does make it a lot more flexible when you can just use your credit card everywhere that you're going. Lastly, I'll just add a couple of my safety tips. I mean, traveling alone as a woman, Sometimes, you know, you have to be a little extra vigilant, unfortunately, just the world that we live in. But I would say, you know, I didn't travel anywhere that I had felt unsafe. But I think it's important to note, no matter where you travel, no matter where you go, even in your own city at home, it's always important to just be aware of your surroundings, aware of your belongings, and just be cautious. I mean, I think that's just blanket advice for life in general, but it goes with anywhere that you're traveling. I'm not someone who ever feels uncomfortable or unsafe in big cities. I don't know, I feel very comforted when there are lots of people around, because if anything were to happen, I mean, there's people around. So you're able to ask for help if you need help, or you know, whatever the case may be. I also never put myself in situations where maybe I could have felt a little more uncomfortable. For example, I was never out late at night by myself, you know, wandering around at 2 or 3 in the morning. I was always back at my hotel or place I was staying at a reasonable hour. And I'm also not the type of person to drink much. I'm not a huge drinker as it is, and I'm not the kind of person who's gonna go out drinking on my own either. So it's not like I'd ever be out like under the influence out by myself at 2 or 3 in the morning. And I think that's just something to be extra cautious of as well. Like, keep your safety in mind and be aware that you are by yourself, and you know, don't put yourself in a position where you could be taken advantage of, or things might not work out in your favor. And I think my last tip on safety, if you ever are, like, sometimes when I'd be out and about at markets, or, you know, just chatting with people here and there, as you tend to do if you're solo traveling, if you ever are in a situation where you're like, you know, I don't want to let this person know I'm traveling alone, just say you're here with a friend. Oh, they're just back at the hotel. Oh, they're just back at wherever I'm staying. They weren't feeling so great today. But just say that you're with someone, rather than traveling alone. Just letting people know that you are with someone and they're just not with you right at the moment. But otherwise, yeah, I guess those would be my top safety tips, or my top tips in general for itinerary planning and budgeting, currency, all of the things. Hopefully you found this helpful. I will catch you in my next video. Bye.